Hi, my name is Patrice Valentine. I am one of the owners here at Profusion Web Solutions. And today, on our weekly 30-minute digital marketing breakdown, we're going to take a look at Schema and how Google and AI use it to understand your business. Schema is not a trend, it's certainly not a hack. It is the behind the scene labels that help Google and AI tools understand what your business is. Today, you're going to leave with a 10-minute checklist at the very end and a simple way to test your own website. You'll know what Schema is in plain English and how it helps your website's visibility, how to check it if you already have it, and the 2 to 3 Schema items that most businesses should be prioritizing today. So let's go ahead and jump in. The easiest way to think about this is Schema is the label on the outside of your moving box. Schema tells Google what is inside your website, basically, so that it doesn't have to guess. Technically, Schema is also called structured data, and it's really just a standardized way to describe what a web page means, not just what it says. Search engines are pretty good at reading the words on the page of your website, so that actual content, Google can really read that and understand it. But Schema helps remove any ambiguity, especially when your content could be interpreted maybe a few different ways. Schema can also describe all kinds of business things that matter to your small business. It can talk about your business information, your services, your hours, your location, if you have frequently asked questions on your website, any products that you have if you're an e-commerce site, any events if you're hosting an event that requires registration potentially, and more. Schema technically is code that is placed on the website. The goal is to make your website easier for search engines and AI tools to understand accurately. So if you're not a developer, obviously, if you're not familiar with writing code, you're not going to have to. So we'll kind of walk you through a little bit what tools are available to you. Important to note about Schema that while Schema helps clarify what is on your website, it is not a magic bullet. So adding Schema is not necessarily going to help your website rank #1 immediately, but if the goal is clarity, and we know that Google and AI love clarity, then Schema will certainly help. If we look at what every site should have, we'll get into looking at exactly what Schema is here in a second. But if we look at what every site should have, the good news is that you don't have to create custom Schema code for every page on your website from scratch. Every site should have a baseline layer of Schema that shows up site-wide. Usually this would be on every single page. Think of this more as like your website's identity badge. The big two schemas are going to be organization or local business schema. This tells Google who you are as a business. The other one is website schema. This tells Google your site is an entity that connects back to your business. And then in most setups, there's also basic web page schema, which helps search engines understand this is a page on this site owned by this business. So it gets really detailed and again, just provides that additional clarity. This is not something you usually have to hand code or add manually to your website. If you use a content management system like WordPress, Squarespace, or Wix, you'll have plugins typically that can help you. For WordPress, you've got Yoast and Rank Math, as well as some others. And what these do is they inject the schema code globally once it's configured correctly. That means it's going to appear across the website automatically on every single page as needed. You may have to go in and tweak some page by page to add the different schemas. We'll talk about that in a second, but you should have that kind of site-wide baseline schema on every single page if you're using some of those plugins on your content management system. If you are not using a content management system, if you don't have the ability to go in and edit your website, you may have to do this manually to each page. But again, if you're using a CMS, and again, most websites do, you shouldn't have to do this manually. There is some configuration that needs to take place, but you shouldn't be writing code and having to do all, any of that. What I'm showing on my screen right now is what schema looks like in real life, not the code itself, but what it looks like in an actual validator. When you run a website page through a schema validator, it basically tells you, it outputs, here's what Google can read and understand about this page. So instead of guessing, you can actually see what your website is telling the search engines behind the scenes. I've got my Profusion Web Solutions homepage up on the screen right now. That's the validator I ran there. You'll notice a few things that it actually identifies. So on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side is the code. On the right, the code for our web page. On the right-hand side is the validator output. You'll notice that it identifies the type of schema it found, like organization or website. So you see right up there, it says web page, local business. So you can see that. It shows things that it can read, like our name, our logo, our URL, and all of the related information. This would also show errors and warnings. So you can see there's 0 errors and 0 warnings. Pay attention to the errors, but errors can be, they can prevent schema from being completely understood correctly, but it might not be an absolute, necessary to do a do-over. It might just be little things that are inconsistent. So you do want to take a look at the errors, but just know that those are guidelines really. The key takeaway is this: you don't need to be technical to check your schema. Anyone can go and run this. If you go to validator.schema.org, you can go and check your own website here. Just know how to run a page through the tool and then look and see, do I have the basics? Are there any obvious errors and or duplicates that I need to be aware of? That was looking at our homepage. So I just ran the profusionwebsolutions.com homepage through that schema validator. And that again kind of included that baseline overarching schema that was on every single page of our website. There are some page-specific schemas, but you only need to add the page-specific schemas when a page has specific purpose or content that is worth labeling as such. Some of the common ones are going to be service pages. These don't usually need to be anything fancy, but if they would benefit from having a schema, then you want to make sure that the page is crystal clear. Make sure that there are headings on the page, there are service details, you include your service area, and if they have an FAQ section, then you want to add the FAQ schema to the schema as well. If you're adding the FAQ schema, make sure that the FAQs actually are visible on the page. So you're not adding FAQs kind of behind the scenes that don't show up on the page. You're really adding the content that shows up on your page in that FAQ format. You're adding those to the schema so it appears both on the page and also in the FAQ schema. If this is a product, if you sell online, product pages should have product schema. This will include things like product name, the price, the availability, shipping terms, and so on. If you have a blog posts will often use what's called the article schema. This helps define the content as an article and connect it back to your organization. So it makes you kind of the authority on that content that was written in that blog post. If you host events, workshops, classes like this one, for example, and you open houses, you can use event schema, and that'll label the time, the place, and the details. You'll see this on like a lot of movie theaters websites where if you Googled Titanic movie times near me, then you'll see like the movie times actually show up in Google search results. You don't have to go to the website in order to see it. That information pulls directly into those search results. That's because those websites are using the event schema to pull in all of that information. And then the last one is the contact/about us pages. There is a schema specifically for that as well. These are usually less about special schema and more about being consistent. Clear business information, who you are, how to reach you. The main point is for all of this, you don't need to have special schema on all pages. Again, that kind of umbrella schema that we talked about will cover most of this. But if you do have a web page that has FAQs on it, or you have product pages, blog posts, then you do want to add the right label where it fits, so Google and AI don't have to guess what is on that page. This schema validator screenshot is showing now that I've pulled in our blog post. So we actually have a blog post about schema, all about this. And again, our website code is on the left-hand side, the schema validator is on the right-hand side, and it just tells you that you can see this identifies it as an article. So we have the blog post information there and identified as an article. It's helpful because it tells Google and the AI tools, this isn't just a piece of it's not a random web page on the site. This is a piece of content that is meant to be read and referenced. In the validator, you're typically going to see fields like article title, publish date, author information, and how it connects back to the website and organization. The big value here is that clarity and attribution. Search engines can more confidently understand what type of content this is and who it's coming from. If you were back on our webinar from a couple of weeks ago, we talked about SEO as in search engine optimization and AEO for answer engine optimization. And we talked a lot about clarity and authority and having the blog article attribute in your schema helps you become that authority, shows your experience level. And again, this just helps your blog post be seen and have that potentially be referenced when they're pulling in information into the AI search results. If the data is structured well and labeled correctly, it's easier to interpret the data, summarize the data, and then for it to surface that data, whether it's in search results or AI-driven answers. So again, just showing the blog post schema here so you can see what that would look like. Now, this is what it looks like when you run a page to a validator and it comes back with no markup detected. Really, all this means is the tool doesn't see any structured data that it can read on that page. The important part about this is extremely common. It doesn't mean that your website is broken. It doesn't mean that you did anything wrong. It usually just means one of three things. Your site either doesn't have schema yet, or maybe it wasn't configured, or your SEO plugin or theme isn't outputting the schema properly. So it's not put in the right place potentially. Could also be that the schema exists, but it's being blocked or duplicated in a way that prevents it from being detected. So it may exist, just not being able to be detected. This is one of those behind the scene fixes that typically a setup and configuration project. It's not a website redo, not a website overhaul. It just something needs to be tweaked in your setup or a schema needs to be added. So if you see no markup detected, don't panic. Just treat this as a starting point for your website in that you do need to go through and either add schema or go through and configure it properly. As marketers, we're looking at schema now because more and more often people are getting answers directly inside search results and in that AI experience tab. They're not even clicking through to the website the way that they used to. So businesses that win in search are the ones that are easiest to understand quickly, and schema helps with that because it reduces any of that ambiguity. Schema and the structured data markup is going to tell machines very clearly, this is a business, these are the services, this is the location, these are the hours, these are the FAQs and the answers. And when machines and Google doesn't have to guess, they're more likely to interpret your business correctly and then surface you in the right context. So again, schema is not a hack. It's not giving you like behind the scenes black box SEO type stuff. It's basically just saying, let's make this easy for search engines and AI tools to be able to connect the dots faster and be able to pull in your data when it's appropriate. If you have your structured data set up properly, that information that's being pulled in when appropriate, like I was just talking about, it can now be seen in what is called the rich results. So Google is going to be using that structured data, the schema, to better understand what is on a page. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, it will display that content in a richer way in the search results. That enhanced display is what Google calls a rich result. If you look at my screen right now, you'll see the rich result has, not only the logo and then the name of the company, but it also has the 5-star rating down below. So it shows the rating and the number of votes that attributed to that rating versus the standard result that does not have that. So instead of your listing just being that blue link and a couple of lines of text, rich results can add visual and interactive elements that help you stand out a bit in the search results. Those types of things that it will add can be, again, visual enhancements like a logo, an image, potentially a video if you have one. It'll show more detailed information like star ratings, pricing, availability, other key attributes depending on the page type. So again, if it's a blog article or if there's FAQs, it might pull that information in directly. There even could be some interactive elements like a search box, a carousel of photos if it's formatted correctly. And business owners really should care about this because when your result takes up more space and answers questions faster, it will improve how noticeable your website is. And in many cases, that will improve the click-through rate compared to a standard result. And even, if it doesn't improve the click-through rate, it might improve the conversion rate. So that might increase in number of phone calls or a number of people who are completing your contact form because they're already becoming more educated on the products and services that you offer and are being able to self-select to contact you sooner than if they were, still trying to be in that research phase. So Schema doesn't force Google to show rich results. There's no way to make Google do this. It just makes your website eligible. So if you don't have structured data, then you will not be eligible for the rich results. If you do have structured data, then you are eligible and it can display it, but again, it doesn't have to. There is a list of rich results that I have linked up there. I believe there's 32 of them that can potentially be pulled in. Things like FAQs, things like reviews, things like ratings. So if you wanted to see a list of the things, a list of the rich results that are available, go ahead and just do a search for a list of rich results and then just click on the Google developers link, but it will show you exactly what information can be pulled in there. Again, I think there's currently 32 of them. So if you just ran your site through that validator and you have realized that you are one of the sites that doesn't have schema, don't panic. It's very common, as we talked about. It's usually a setup issue, maybe not a website rebuild. It's very rarely the case that it has to be a complete website rebuild. But step one is going to be make sure the basics are correct. Make sure your core business information is correct on your website, visibly on your website. Make sure your business name, your address, your phone number, your hours, your location, because schema is really only helpful if the information it's describing is accurate. Step two, take the easiest path for your platform. So if you're using WordPress, again, there's plenty of plugins that you can use. I've got a few of them listed here. Yoast, Rank Math, AIO, SEO, SEO Press are all available. And most of them have free versions that you can use to output your schema and your structured data. If you're on Squarespace or Wix, you'll lean on, they have their built-in SEO tools and business information settings, and then just make sure that your pages clearly show your key information, especially your services and FAQ, so search engines can interpret that data correctly. The big win upgrade for most service businesses is this: add the FAQ schema to either your homepage if the FAQs appear there or to whatever service page has the FAQ. Again, first of all, you're going to want to make sure that those FAQs exist on that page. So if you don't currently have any frequently asked questions on your site, start there. Add 3 to 5 questions and answers that people really ask when they're looking for your products or services. So think through those and then add those to your website. And then again, using your plugin, either on WordPress plugin or a Squarespace plugin, go through and using your plugin, configure the schema to add the FAQ schema, and that is going to allow you to include those different questions that you have on that page and to have that information not only on the page, but on the schema as well, so that Google can, in fact, read that information. Now, after you make these changes, be sure to test it. Go to that rich results tester and also the schema validator and test to make sure that you're not seeing any critical errors. Here are the links directly to those. So if you want to check your site, it is search.google.com/test/rich-results. And then the schema markup validator, very simple. Just go to validator.schema.org. So run a test on both of those. Always, whenever you make changes, go run and just do a quick test. They're free. They take a couple minutes to do. But what you're looking for is, are the basics detected, or are there major errors or duplicates? Just make sure that everything is kind of validating correctly for you. If this feels too technical, that's pretty normal. Schema is one of those behind the scenes things that is easy to get almost right, but small mistakes can cause it to be ignored. So again, if you would rather not wrestle with this, obviously reach out to us. This is the kind of tune-up we usually handle pretty quickly and without having to rebuild your site, as I mentioned. So if this is just feeling like way too much for you, just reach out. We can certainly help you with this. Before we wrap up, I do want to save you from some of the most common schema mistakes, because again, schema is helpful, but only when it's accurate and clean. Again, I want to reiterate that first, don't add markup that doesn't actually match what people can see on your website, especially with the FAQs. If the frequently asked question and answers aren't visible on the page, don't mark them up as FAQs. Google will ignore it, or worse, treat it as potentially misleading and then not show your website. So only do schema, FAQ schema, if that content exists on that page that you're adding the schema to. The second thing is watch out for duplicate or conflicting schema. This happens a lot when you have multiple plugins or a theme itself. The theme can actually add schema on top of your SEO plugin. If two systems are both trying to define your business, Google will again get mixed signals. And again, what we're looking for is clarity here, so mixed signals does not help. Make sure your business details are current. The wrong business type, an outdated address, an old phone number, if that's embedded in the markup, then you're feeding search engines the wrong information. And again, it's conflicting with what is on the page. So that information that is in schema and the information that is on the page needs to be the same. Fourth is be careful with review and rating schema. Don't try to pad it with any spammy type markup. If your ratings aren't legitimate and they're not visible, then it will be ignored. And again, in some cases, it can create a bigger problem. So don't put in fake reviews. Don't put in false information into the review or rating schema. And last, do not leave it untested. Again, like I said on the previous slide, always validate via the schema markup validator after changes. Schema is, again, one of those things where small formatting issues can break the whole thing. So testing is a part of the process. It is not an optional step. So test, test, test always. If you're looking for things that you can do right now, the first thing I would do is go to your homepage and run your website page through the rich results test. That's going to tell you what Google can actually read from your website right now. Again, you might get that page back that shows nothing is there to be read, and then at least you have a starting point. Step 2 is confirm that your name, address, and phone number and your hours of operation, if relevant. If make sure that those are correct on your website. If those are wrong on your site, even schema won't save you. It needs to be correct and consistent. Step 3, confirm that your organization or local business schema exists and is accurate. You don't need a ton of information in this. It just needs the foundational information. Again, that's going to be things like name, address, logo, category, things like that. So make sure that foundation exists. Step 4, add 3 real FAQs to your top service page or your homepage. The questions, again, that customers are actually asking before they buy. This is one of the simplest ways to improve clarity for humans and machines coming to your website. And then step 5, retest, test, and retest. Fix any errors that you see and remove any of those duplicate schema sources. You should have one plugin that becomes kind of the source of truth so that Google does not get confused. If you were to go add this schema to your website perfectly today, and you're thinking, okay, I did it, I validated it, everything is beautiful, the realistic outcome is going to be clearer understanding and eligibility for certain enhanced search displays, like those rich results we talked about. It is not going to be an instant rankings jump. You will have richer looking search results when Google chooses to show them. Again, we can't tell it to do it. We just give it the information and Google decides whether or not it's going to. But Google will use that structured data to better understand your content and to show richer appearances when you're eligible. So it allows you at least to be in the game of showing better results. You can expect higher click-through rate for having the same ranking. So even if your rank doesn't go up, you can expect some higher click-through rates because, again, that structured data will enable more engaging results that will encourage users to interact more. There will be fewer misunderstandings about your business, especially around basic things like your name, logo, services, contact information, and again, those all important FAQs when implemented correctly. And then the last one is slightly better positioning for AI-driven services. Again, Google is continuing to tell us that the same SEO best practices still apply for AI features. Schema helps with being understood, which supports that basic foundation. Again, clarity will always win. So the goal here is we're trying to make your website more clear. We're trying to make it so there's less confusion out there about your business, and that's exactly what Schema does. At Profusion, we are fans of doing the little things right. In fact, we will always lean on a quote from Vincent van Gogh where he said, "Great things are done by a series of small things brought together." Schema is just one small thing to add to your site that brings clarity and understanding. And in the eyes of Google and AI, like I said, clarity will always win. So that's it for today. Next week, we're going to be looking at local visibility in the AI era. We'll be looking at Google Business Profile and reviews and consistency and how all of those together equate big wins. If you'd like to register, you can go to profusionwebsolutions.com/webinar-series. Even if you can't make it live, go ahead and register to receive the playback. We are also getting close to our office hours session where we open the weekly webinar up for Q&A. So if you'd like to submit your question, just send an email to me. It's Patrice, Patrice, at profusionwebsolutions.com. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week.